Hello everyone, it's Richard Lewis here again with another video. I know if you follow this channel or follow anything to do with gaming, you'll have seen lots of talk about the Activision Blizzard lawsuit filed by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing that claims they are guilty of systemic sexism, underpaying female employees, turning a blind eye at some of the most heinous acts. And since the lawsuit went public, it has set off a chain reaction of happenings and stories and headlines. And I know it's been very hard to keep up with because I myself have been keeping up with it. What I wanted to do was record a video that will act as a definitive timeline. So in as quick an amount of time as possible, you will be totally up to speed with everything that went on. And you will have an understanding of why this is so serious and industry changing and exactly what Activision Blizzard stand accused of. So on the 22nd of July, that was when the lawsuit was made public. It was first reported, I believe, in Bloomberg Law, and they covered it thusly. According to the complaint filed Tuesday in the Los Angeles Superior Court, female employees make up around 20% of the Activision workforce and are subjected to a pervasive frat boy workplace culture, including cube crawls, in which male employees drink copious amounts of alcohol as they crawl their way through various cubicles in the office and often engage in inappropriate behavior toward female employees. The agency alleges male employees play video games during the workday while delegating responsibilities to female employees, engage in sexual banter, and joke openly about rape, among other things. Female employees allege being held back from promotions because of the possibility they might become pregnant, being criticized for leaving to pick their children up from daycare, and being kicked out of lactation rooms so male colleagues could use the room for meetings. Female employees working for the World of Warcraft team noted that male employees and supervisors would hit on them, make derogatory comments about rape, and otherwise engage in demeaning behavior. The suit also points to a female Activision employee who took her own life while on a company trip with her male supervisor. The employee had been subjected to intense sexual harassment prior to her death, including having nude photos passed around at a company holiday party. This obviously was shocking, maybe not surprising. Obviously, we've seen lots of companies accused of similar cultures, most notably the 2018 report on Riot Games, for which there's still ongoing litigation. But despite the fact that this was territory that we've seen before in the industry, the first reaction from Activision Blizzard, they provided a statement to The Verge, and it was a PR disaster of cataclysmic proportions. They said, "We value diversity and strive to foster a workplace that offers inclusivity for everyone. There is no place in our company or industry or any industry for sexual misconduct or harassment of any kind. We take every allegation seriously and investigate all claims. In cases related to misconduct, action was taken to address the issue." The Department of Fair Employment and Housing includes distorted and in many cases false descriptions of Blizzard's past. We have been extremely cooperative with the DFEH throughout their investigation, including providing them with extensive data and ample documentation, but they refused to inform us what issues they perceived. They were required by law to adequately investigate and to have good faith discussions with us to better understand and to resolve any claims or concerns before going to litigation, but failed to do so. Instead, they rushed to file an inaccurate complaint, as we will demonstrate in court. We are sickened by the reprehensible conduct of the DFEH to drag into the complaint the tragic suicide of an employee whose passing has no bearing whatsoever on this case and with no regard for a grieving family. While we find this behavior to be disgraceful and unprofessional, it is unfortunately an example of how they have conducted themselves throughout the course of their investigation. It is this type of irresponsible behavior from unaccountable state bureaucrats that are driving many of the state's best businesses out of California. The picture the DFEH paints is not the Blizzard workplace of today. Over the past several years, and continuing since the initial investigation started, we've made significant changes to address company culture and reflect more diversity within our leadership teams. We've amplified internal programs and channels for employees to report violations, including the Ask list, with a confidential integrity hotline, and introduced an employee relations team dedicated to investigating employee concerns. We have strengthened our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and combined our employee networks at a global level to provide additional support. Employees must also undergo regular anti-harassment training and have done so for many years. We put tremendous effort in creating fair and rewarding compensation packages and policies that reflect our culture and business, and we strive to pay all employees fairly for equal or substantially similar work. We take a variety of proactive steps to ensure that pay is driven by non-discriminatory factors. For example, we reward and compensate employees based on their performance, and we conduct extensive anti-discrimination training, including for those who are part of the compensation process. We are confident in our ability to demonstrate our practices as an equal opportunity employer that fosters a supportive, diverse, and inclusive workplace for our people, and we are committed to continuing this effort in the years to come. It is a shame that the DFEH did not want to engage with us on what they thought they were seeing in their investigations. Now, the revelations that were coming out and the subsequent combative statement from Blizzard very quickly started making waves on the internet, and naturally, people wanted to start distancing themselves from what was seen as a very harsh response from the company. Bungie, who had terminated a publishing agreement with Activision ahead of schedule in 2019, they made it clear that any corporate culture that fostered those occurrences had not been replicated by them, despite an almost 10-year working relationship. They did a series of tweets that said, Bungie is built on empowering our people no matter who they are, where they are from, or how they identify. We have a responsibility to acknowledge, reflect, and to do what we can to push back on a persistent culture of harassment, abuse, and inequality that exists in our industry. It's our responsibility to ensure this type of behavior is not tolerated at Bungie at any level, and that we never excuse it or sweep it under the rug. While the accounts in this week's news are difficult to read, we hope they will lead to justice, awareness, and accountability. We have a zero-tolerance policy at Bungie for environments that support this toxic culture, and we are committed to rooting them out to defend those who are at risk. Blizzard recognized that trying to promote anything new during this time would be terrible optics, so the company pushed back a reveal of a new map in Overwatch that was first reported over at Deserto. This would be echoed in Hearthstone, where some of their top content creators, such as Alistraza and Trump, would publicly cancel their card reveals. Blizzard would then basically absolve all the content creators from doing the card reveals and slowly trot that out a few days later. And the legendary Hearthstone commentator Frodan said he would step away from working on the Hearthstone Grandmasters for next season and beyond, saying he wanted to make room for upcoming women in the scene. Internally, responses to the lawsuit were underway that would be at odds with the very aggressive public statement that Activision had made. The president of Activision, Rob Kotick, had addressed employees in an email and said, "Let me be clear, there is a zero tolerance for this type of behavior in the workplace or frankly in our society. We as a company take every allegation seriously and investigate all claims. When wrongdoing is found, those responsible are held accountable, and we will continue to do so. Each of you deserves to be treated with dignity, equality, and respect at all times. The behaviors described are not reflective of our Activision company values. Our values are not just words on a page. They are at the core of who we are day to day and who we aspire to be for years to come." The Blizzard president, J. Allen Brack, sent out an email containing similar messaging and invoking the name of feminist journalist Gloria Steinem. He said, "When I talked to Bobby," meaning Kotick, "about taking this job, one of the first things I mentioned was a revered saint of the Brack household, Gloria Steinem. Growing up with the value of women as equals, understanding the work that had been done for equal treatment, and the fact there was still much to do were common themes. This is just one of the reasons why the fight for equality is incredibly important to me. People with different backgrounds, views, and experiences are essential for Blizzard, our teams, and our player community. I disdain bro culture and have spent my career fighting against it. Keep that last part in mind for a little bit later on in the video. Now, bizarrely, the same day as those emails were circulated and then later publicized, Activision Blizzard's Executive Vice President for Corporate Affairs, Fran Townsend, distributed an email more in line with the company's initial response, condemning the behavior, yes, but also the lawsuit and the approach from the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. She said a recently filed lawsuit presented a distorted and untrue picture of our company, including factually incorrect, old, and out-of-context stories, some from more than a decade ago. The Activision companies of today, the Activision companies that I know, are great companies with good values. When I joined the executive leadership team, I was certain I was joining a company where I would be valued, treated with respect, and provided opportunities equal to those afforded to the men of the company. For me, this has been true during my time. Now, that email from Townsend certainly didn't help matters, and several employees publicly spoke of their intent to walk out in solidarity with the victims and in protest of Activision Blizzard's corporate response. The reaction was best summarized by the words of associate producer Olivia Burkhart, who said, "These past few days have made me furious at the company I work for, but so proud of the people I work with. Everyone is rallying together, listening, speaking out against the atrocious responses and demanding action. We are here, angry, and not so easily silenced." The following day, the now departed founder of Blizzard, Mike Morhaime, who has since founded a new company called Dreamhaven, gave his response. And given his tenure and managerial overlap with many of the allegations, many weren't willing to give him a pass. He said, "I have read the full complaint against Activision Blizzard and many of the other stories. It is all very disturbing and difficult to read. I am ashamed. It feels like everything I thought I stood for has been washed away. What's worse, but even more important, real people have been harmed and some women had terrible experiences. I was at Blizzard for 28 years. During that time, I tried very hard to create an environment that was safe and welcoming for people of all genders and backgrounds. I knew that it was not perfect, but clearly we were far from that goal. The fact that so many women were mistreated and were not supported means we let them down. In addition, we did not succeed in making it feel safe for people to tell their truth. It is no consolation that other companies have faced similar challenges. I wanted us to be different, better." Now, some employees pushed back on that apology, such as the former Blizzard senior systems engineer, Reign of Terror, who pointed out that people who had been investigated for abuse were promoted to positions of greater authority while Morhaime was still at the company. In addition to that, former software engineer Cher Scarlett detailed how she was reprimanded for CCing him into an email trying to notify him of the abuse that was ongoing at the company. By now, the internet was digging into everything it could, and unsurprisingly, they were able to dredge up tweets and clips of people saying things that were viewed as less than palatable, certainly by today's standards. This included a 10-year-old clip from a Blizzard Q&A session where a woman from the audience asked if they could design female characters who don't look like they've stepped out of a Victoria's Secrets catalogue. The panel, comprised of super feminist J. Allen Brack, remember, Greg Ghostcrawler Street, and the WoW senior creative director, who was directly named in the lawsuit as one of the worst offenders, Alex Afrasiabi, was more than dismissive, as you can see for yourself.
Hi there, Xantia from Kieran Tor. I love what you guys done with Little Crest. I love the fact that you have a lot of very strong female characters. However, I was wondering if we could have some that don't look like they've stepped out of a Victoria's Secrets catalog.
What do you mean?
Wait. Which catalog would you like them to step out of?
Could you see Sylvanas looking any other way? Right. So we feel you, and we want to vary our female characters, absolutely. So yeah, we'll pick different catalogs.
This prompted a series of tweets from Street, now of Riot Games, who said, look, it was a shitty answer at the time, and it certainly hasn't aged well. I wish I had said something better then. You can't really see the people asking the questions well from the stage, and I feel terrible now seeing the look on her face. I have more experience now answering questions live, but no doubt that won't be my last shitty answer. I apologise for those as well as for this one. You will notice, of course, J. Allen Brack didn't champion feminism in that moment either, and indeed hasn't spoke out about the clip at all or the part he played in it. The next day, it was the turn of Chris Metzen, who was Senior Vice President of Story and Franchise Development until 2016 at Blizzard. His response said, "We failed, and I'm sorry. To all of you at Blizzard, those of you I know and those of whom I've never met, I offer you my very deepest apologies for the part I played in a culture that fostered harassment, inequality, and indifference. There is no excuse. We failed too many people when they needed us because we had the privilege of not noticing, not engaging, not creating necessary space for the colleagues who needed us as leaders. Words are cheap. Not sure what grand sweeping promises really do either. Accountability starts with people, not corporations or platitudes or values cast in iron around a statue." And that last part references the statue outside of their California offices that give their 8 core values, which includes the now infamous Every Voice Matters claim that was underlined as being hypocritical when they penalized a player for speaking out in support of Hong Kong to appease their Chinese paymasters. Current and former employees were still sharing their experiences, and the stories were not getting any easier to listen to. Details of similar behavior in the Austin office was shared on Twitter from another former Blizzard employee, this time detailing how one pregnant woman was abused by a manager called Miles Tumble and disciplined for using the restroom in her final trimester. The very detailed allegations would read, "In 2014, my team manager, the boss's boss, harassed me daily while I was pregnant. He would write me up for using the restroom to pee at 8 to 9 months pregnant, claiming I was outside my allotted breaks and adherence metric. Every day I'd come to work being told that might be the day I got fired. My direct supervisor used to like to sneak up behind me and grab my sides or shoulders and yell to scare me. I'm very jumpy and would always scream. He'd laugh at me and tell me to chill out when I begged him to stop. When I complained to my team manager, the same one as above, he gave me an essay written by some Harvard Business School professor about being too sensitive to criticism. I was made to read it at home, then sit in a room alone with the 2 men, explaining what I had learned from it and how I'd stop complaining about the touching going forward. I spent my lunch hours bawling alone in my car." By this point, as many as 2,000, and it would later increase to 3,000 employees at the company, had signed a letter addressed to the company's management that directly pushed back against the corporate response, saying they were not doing enough to support victims. They also called on Fran Townsend, who had only joined the company in March, to step down from one of her positions within the company. The letter would read, "To the leaders of Activision Blizzard, we, the undersigned, agree that the statements from Activision Blizzard Incorporated and their legal counsel regarding the DFEH lawsuit, as well as the subsequent internal statement from Frances Townsend, are abhorrent and insulting to all that we believe our company should stand for. To put it clearly and unequivocally, our values as employees are not accurately reflected in the words and actions of our leadership. We believe these statements have damaged our ongoing quest for equality inside and outside of our industry. Categorizing the claims that have been made as distorted and in many cases false creates a company atmosphere that disbelieves victims. It also casts doubt on our organization's ability to hold abusers accountable for their actions and foster a safe environment for victims to come forward in future. These statements make it clear that our leadership is not putting our values first. Immediate corrections are needed from the highest level of our organization. Our company executives have claimed that actions will be taken to protect us, but in the face of legal action and the troubling official responses that followed, we no longer trust that our leaders will place employee safety above their own interests. They claim this is a truly meritless and irresponsible lawsuit, while seeing so many current and former employees speak out about their own experiences regarding harassment and abuse is simply unacceptable. We call for official statements that recognize the seriousness of the allegations and demonstrate compassion for victims of harassment and assault. We call on Frances Townsend, stand by her word, to step down as executive sponsor of the ABK Employee Women's Network as a result of the damaging nature of her statement, and we call on the executive leadership team to work with us on new and meaningful efforts that ensure employees, as well as our community, have a safe place to speak out and come forward. We stand with all our friends, teammates and colleagues, as well as the members of our dedicated community who have experienced mistreatment or harassment of any kind. We will not be silenced, we will not stand aside, and we will not give up until the company we love is a workplace we can all feel proud to be part of again. We will be the change. At this point, the company CEO, Bobby Kotick, who had been conspicuously absent, entered the fray, acknowledging that the initial responses from the company had been tone deaf. He issued a letter to all of the employees that had signed that letter and everyone at the company. And he said, "This has been a difficult and upsetting week. I want to recognize and thank all those who have come forward in the past and in recent days. I so appreciate your courage. Every voice matters, and we will do a better job of listening now and in the future. Our initial response to the issues we face together and to your concerns were quite frankly tone deaf. It is imperative that we acknowledge all perspectives and experiences and respect the feelings of those who have been mistreated in any way. I am sorry that we did not provide the right empathy and understanding. Many of you have told us that active outreach comes from caring so deeply for the company, that so many people have reached out and shared thoughts, suggestions, and highlighted opportunities for improvement is a powerful reflection of how you care for our communities of colleagues and players, and for each other. Ensuring that we have a safe and welcoming work environment is my highest priority. The leadership team has heard you loud and clear." Now, unfortunately, that didn't seem to align with their actions, because the company had also retained the services of WilmerHale Law Firm, which is the same firm that's helping Amazon keep its workers from unionizing. There was a reaction to Bobby Kotick's letter. Staff were now ready to enact their organized walkouts on the 28th. They provided a statement to Blizzard Watch that read, "Given last week's statement from Activision Blizzard Incorporated and their legal counsel regarding the DFEH lawsuit, as well as the subsequent internal statement from Frances Townsend and the many stories shared by current and former employees of Activision Blizzard since, we believe that our values as employees are not being accurately reflected in the words and actions of our leadership." And they also put a list of 4 demands made to the management that they believed would be a positive change within the company. They requested an end to mandatory arbitration clauses in all employee contracts. They wanted the adoption of recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and promotion policies designed to improve representation among employees at all levels agreed upon by employees in a company-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion organization. They wanted publication of data on relative compensation, including equity grants and profit sharing, promotion rates, and salary ranges for employees of all genders and ethnicities at the company. And they wanted to empower a company-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion task force to hire a third party to audit ABK's reporting structure, HR department, and executive staff. At this point, the company was doing what it could to defuse the situation. So it was announced over at Axios that the company would be paying all employees for the day they would be spending protesting the management and the corporate response. And it had also been announced that World of Warcraft would be removing in-game references to aspects of the lawsuit. And it wasn't clear what those were. They didn't specifically state them. But given that there were 2 NPCs that related to Afrasiabi, who was, of course, again, one of the worst offenders named in the lawsuit, those were the likely candidates to be replaced in-game. The next few days would bring a number of lurid articles detailing the horror stories from within the company. Kotaku would focus on the so-called Cosby Suite, named after Bill Cosby, which they described thusly: The Cosby Suite was more than just a nickname or a joke. Based on images and comments Afrasiabi posted on his Facebook, supplied to Kotaku by a former developer at Blizzard, it was reportedly a booze-filled meeting place where many, including Afrasiabi, would pose with an actual portrait of Bill Cosby while smiling. It was also a hotspot for informal networking at BlizzCon, 3 sources told Kotaku, where people looking to make inroads at the company would go to meet and hang out with some of its top designers. It also showed chat logs that showed management stating they were gathering women to bring up to the room. In it, former Blizzard designer David Kotick wrote, "I am gathering the hot chicks for the cause. Bring 'em," replies Afrasiabi. "You can't marry all of them, Alex," Kotick writes. "I can, I'm Middle Eastern," responds Afrasiabi. Jesse McCree, currently a lead game developer designer at Blizzard, then wrote, "You misspelled fuck." The people involved would deny that the reference to Cosby had anything to do with plying women with drink and drugs for the purposes of sex. According to one source, the article would say, who had knowledge of the hotel room, the Cosby Suite name was a play on the comedian's iconic ugly sweaters and didn't have any sexual connotation, at least not when the joke began. Instead, they suggest the running joke was that the rooms in question looked dated, like the sweater itself. And you can pull the other one. It's got bells on. Another eagle-eyed person found a tweet that was subsequently deleted but had been archived in 2016, where Afrasiabi apologized for calling a woman and her friend bitches and pulling a "do you know who I am?" This would also be the same day that former lead software engineer Chad Engler would detail how he was sexually abused after approaching someone who was speaking about how attractive his wife was. There would also be an anecdote about an employee who had been handed a long letter relating to an unrequited romance within the company, and she would also detail how the employee she rebuffed would go on to harass other women at the company. He was obsessed with a friend within weeks of the rejection, she would go on to say, and the way he treated her is what prompts me now to speak. He got an Airbnb near the hotel to oblige her to get a lunch date, made threatening comments about murdering her boyfriend when she began dating him. He once told others she flashed him a lie to look cool. These things damage reputations. Lying about people to others in this industry is a big deal in a small network like ours. I'm angry I watched him do this dance with 3 other industry women and didn't reach out or speak up against questionable behavior. IGN went with fury, worry, and walkouts inside Activision Blizzard's week of reckoning, and 2 particularly prominent and disgraceful paragraphs would read, "One woman told me she doggedly avoided drinking events on campus because of their reputation. Another talked about how it was much more sexual in Blizzard's main office in Irvine circa 2015, with women being subjected to inappropriate touching in the chest area and elsewhere, sometimes at the holiday party, sometimes not." A source who has since departed Blizzard talked about how the room designated for breastfeeding didn't have locks. Men would walk into the breastfeeding room, there was no way to lock the door, they would just stare, and I would have to scream at them to leave. IGN now understands that breastfeeding rooms have since been updated with locks added to the doors. Vice would go with Activision IT worker secretly filmed colleagues in office bathroom. An Activision IT worker pleaded guilty to mounting a camera under the sink in a manner to point at the toilet in 2018, according to court records. In 2018, they would write, a former Activision Blizzard IT worker installed cameras in the company's Minnesota office bathroom with the intent to spy on employees while they used the toilet, according to court records reviewed by Waypoint and local media reports from the time. The employee, Tony Ray Nixon, pleaded guilty to interference with privacy, a gross misdemeanor, and was given a suspended prison sentence. He later allegedly violated his parole, requiring to take sex offender treatment as directed. Nixon worked for Activision Blizzard in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, where the company maintains a building that focuses on quality assurance. There was a lot of speculation about whether or not this could have been caught sooner, and one of the leading games journalists in the world, Jason Schreier, he got upset and said that while he'd heard things, he'd been actively investigating it for years and couldn't get it over the line. Thousands of Gamergate cretins are spreading a rumour that I was hiding or sitting on the story about Blizzard. Normally I wouldn't address their nonsense, but I'm getting flooded with messages, so here's the truth. I'd been actively investigating this for years. 3 months ago, I'd heard rumours and anecdotes but could never corroborate enough for an article for various reasons. That happens often. Sometimes it takes something monumental for the truth to come out, and I'm blown away by the courage of those who have shared their stories. It raises a number of questions that if you were aware of something for years and you couldn't publicise anonymous sources making the claims or the allegations, or you couldn't find any hard evidence, keep in mind that since the lawsuit's gone public, all this evidence has come tumbling out, and a number of other publications have printed stories with hard and damning evidence in it. But this is not a surprise when it comes to Schreier. He also didn't write up sex abuse allegations against the NeoGAF forum owner, but he did choose to write up the Chris Avallone's allegations. Very strange. Couldn't possibly at all be selective, could it? So, no doubt over the coming weeks and months, there's going to be something of a post-mortem. How could so many people have known so much and say so little, especially people in the media? Activision Blizzard have become increasingly notorious for being vindictive in how they add critics to a media blacklist for any little thing, and many are now asking how much that played a part in the lack of media coverage prior to the point the lawsuit was made public. As always, you can be sure to drop by this channel to find out the latest, but for now, I'll see you on the next video. Take care.